Hello and welcome to HateWatchers, as we kick off our reviews for the third season of The Mandalorian, beginning with the season premiere episode entitled The Apostate. Just before we start, please hit that thumbs up to help us get our videos out to more Star Wars fans out there. Now let's get into it. Spoilers ahead. We begin with the Armorer leading a traditional Mandalorian ceremony where they make the ugliest kid in the village start wearing a helmet, forever. The second half of the ceremony begins in earnest as the ceremonial alligator beast emerges to try and eat the ugly child. Mando, who was exiled from this cult, shows up and kills the ceremonial beast, which is sure to get him welcomed back. The Armorer tells Mando that he's lame and he's not allowed in their club anymore, and no amount of green rocks is going to change that. Mando says, "If I go take a naked soak in the mines beneath Mandalore, you have to let me in your cult again." And the Armorer says, "Okay, but you have to take pictures." Traveling through hyperspace, Baby Yoda gets annoyed seeing those damn whales from Star Wars Rebels. The pair arrive on Navarro, where they've got an IG-11 statue in the center of town. Carl Weathers, aka Grief Karga, comes out to give Mando some cooking tips.
You take this home, throw it in a pot, add some broth, a potato. Baby, you got a stew going.
And now he's trying to set Mando up in a timeshare. When some pirates are causing trouble by trying to drink at an elementary school, Mando, who highly values early education, murders 4 of them. They say that Gina Carano's character went to live on a farm. Mando turns down the timeshare offer after some consideration, explaining that he has pressing matters to attend to. When Grief asks what he needs, Mando tells Grief to make a statue of him. Mando insists, but Grief refuses, so a jealous Mando takes this statue down. Mando tries to bring IG-11 back to life to convince Grief to build a statue of Mando, but it instead tries to kill Mando. Not one to give up, Mando makes a bunch of lemurs do the work instead because he can pay them in bananas. They're negotiating the job when Grogu steps in as an enforcer and makes the monkey accept the deal. After leaving to find a part for the IG droid, Mando gets distracted by teaching this infant how to fly, and he cuts one of the pirates off, so in a fit of road rage, they try and kill him. Some fancy flying takes out 5 of the pirates, but Mando gets lured into a trap. Davy Jones and the Flying Dutchman are waiting behind an asteroid, but Mando just hits the plot armor button and speeds past them. They reach a planet called Kalevala and arrive at a Mandalorian castle. Mando and Grogu enter the castle and find Ho-Katan sulking on a throne. Mando wants to join her Night Owls group to travel to Mandalore, but she says she's lost her forces and ships and is a broken person, so she tells Mando to kick rocks and do it himself. He says, "I will, you lazy bitch," and leaves, and the episode comes to an end. Well, we've reached that point in the video where we have to decide if this episode was a great watch or a hate watch. And this episode earns the great watch designation, but it was just good. I'd give it a 7 out of 10. This episode was a good example of the kind of space adventure show that The Mandalorian has always been good at consistently producing. We got to see multiple, different planets, some shooting, an epic beast, and a bunch of ships. It's what a lot of Star Wars fans want out of a live-action show. We got some real fun space combat too, and it feels like it's been years since we got any kind of extended actual Star Wars in Star Wars, so that was a high point for this episode. The story was okay, nothing to write home about, but the goal here was to reintroduce everyone to the characters and set up the plot points for this season, so mission accomplished on that front. It's been over 2 years since we had episodes of The Mandalorian, so they might need to take it slow to start. Speaking of starts, it's not a good start for the majority of people who saw Bo-Katan as the main villain of this season, but it could just be some misdirection. Grogu is using the Force more freely, and that coupled with Favreau coming out and saying that Grogu was training with Luke for 2 years makes me think that they're laying the groundwork for Grogu to pull off some powerful Force feat this season. It seems like they're trying to provide ample evidence that Grogu is better and more controlled in his usage of the Force than he used to be, in order to properly explain how Grogu might be capable of something remarkable. Speaking of Grogu, it was getting close, but the cute Baby Yoda moments, which were starting to become too frequent and annoying, weren't too obnoxious in this episode, which was good. Now, the Purrgil whales that Mando and Baby Yoda see in hyperspace are dumb, but they have a link to Ezra Bridger, a mediocre character that's likely to have a part to play in the Ahsoka show. These whales blast into hyperspace and are the kind of unbelievable thing that should stay in the animated shows. "Oh, it's Star Wars. There's talking carpets and space wizards. It's all fake, so you can't say some fake things don't belong there." Part of what makes different fantasy worlds so alluring is that each has its own structure and rules, and fans start to get an idea of what makes sense in that world and what doesn't. For example, early on in the OG Star Wars trilogy, we see the Force being used to pull off mind tricks, or for simple, understandable mechanical movements like pushing, pulling, and choking. So when we see Kylo and Rey teleporting items through space and time to one another, we know that it doesn't fit the Star Wars universe. The same would be said if a Force push suddenly came with a Dragon Ball Z style beam of light. Or if Star Wars characters started saying the names of spells when using Force powers, like in Harry Potter. It's all fantasy, but thinking that that means there's no rules is absurd. And these whales sucking in gas and blasting into hyperspace is a bridge too far for many people. It's just an example of Dave Filoni thinking something was cool and looked good visually, and threw it in without asking if it belongs there. The payoff might be worth it if it brings us one step closer to a live-action Grand Admiral Thrawn, but Disney has a 50-50 chance of screwing him up also, so we'll see. All in all, this episode does its job as a premiere episode, and it could be setting the stage for some great moments this season. What did you think about this premiere episode? Did it do enough to make sure you'll tune in for the next episode? Do you think space whales are dumb? Let us know in the comments below. If you haven't already, please like the video if you liked it, and click the subscribe button down below to stay tuned to the channel for the rest of this third season of The Mandalorian. Thank you for joining us today, and we'll catch you on the next one.